It's all been happening in America, hasn't it? The Trump shooting, Biden stepping down, Kamala Harris stepping into the fray. And when I was on holiday, I was following a lot of this on X. And I've realised, you've probably known this for ages, I've just realised on X there's two settings. You can either have your feed for you or people you're following. Because I was confused. I was thinking, just my X feed was just full of American political commentators, all sorts. I was thinking, who are these people? These are not the people I follow. But I realised I needed to click following to get my regular diet of Scottish politics. So then that was just illustrative of the way that our political thinking, the political narrative, can be completely taken over by what is going on in America. And it ends up that's what people in Scotland are thinking about, that's what they're watching, listening to, and that's what they're talking about. So we've just got a few thoughts to share on a few recent events. I'm not going to just recover the familiar ground. Hopefully there's some slightly different things to say. Right, Joe Biden stood down. Obviously he needed to because he just wasn't up to it. But it was interesting. A lot of people, a lot of commentators seem to want to say, is he too old for the job? Whereas anyone with any sense can see it's nothing to do with how old you are. It's the fact that he was not able to. He's got mental problems that meant he was unable to do that. Now, why did they choose to try and make it about age? Because age, of course, is one of the sacred protected characteristics. You can't discriminate on grounds of age, but you also can't discriminate on grounds of disability. Now, Joe Biden is basically suffering from a mild form of disability. So why do they choose age as the safer thing to talk about, even though it obviously isn't really the issue? Well, thinking about it, I think the reason is that generally there's a sort of hatred of meritocracy. The idea that some people are better at something than other people, and they're the people who ought to have the job, and other people, even though they might have similar characteristics in other ways, they're not up to doing the job because they're just not as good at it. So a lot of people don't like that idea. Whereas if you say it's to do with age, then that can be much more clear-cut. You can say you can't be a president over the age of 80. Then that's the same for everyone. That's equality. Equal for everyone. It's not meritocratic. So the best I could come up with, why people wanted to talk about age when it clearly wasn't an age issue, instead of ability when it clearly was, is I think they wanted to avoid appearing meritocratic. Right, next thing that happened, Trump's assassination attempt. Now, when you saw the Secret Service agents responding in the immediate aftermath, it did look like some of the female agents were a bit clueless. They didn't know what to do. They were fumbling around and looked a bit lost. Now, some people jump to the conclusion that that's because they're diversity, equality and inclusion hires. They've been given the job because they're women to meet some sort of target, some sort of quota. Now, it seems like that might well be true. And maybe they were clueless, maybe they were less able at the job because of that reason, because they were selected on the basis of sex rather than ability. That could well be the case. You can't be certain looking at that, but it might well be. Now, some people have then gone on to say that therefore there should be no women in the Secret Service. But I say, no, you don't need to do that. What you need to do for the Secret Service, as for any other job, is you decide what your criteria are for being able to do that job. So to join the American Secret Service, they should have various tests of your psyche, of your physical capabilities, everything. Whatever they think is necessary for the job, they should test for it. And anyone who meets those criteria, then they can go forward into that job. Now, if you set those criteria at what is genuinely necessary for that job, and if it so happens that actually not a single woman can meet that criteria, then so be it. There's going to be all men. But that's very unlikely to happen. No matter how restrictive you make the criteria in terms of physical capabilities, there's likely to be a woman eventually who's going to be able to meet those and will be able to join. So you don't need to say no women in the Secret Service. If your concern is about quality, just select on whatever criteria are actually necessary, and that will do the job for you. I mean, were there security lapses in Donald Trump's assassination attempt? Well, yes, it does look like it. But dear me, reading my X feed, just the wild conspiracy theorizing taking place right from the very beginning, it was just ludicrous, laughable. But that just seems to have such a grip on so many people in our society. Now, I can see the attraction, but it just had no credibility as far as I was concerned. The assassination attempt, of course, did him a favour. It's often with these things. If you try and do something that's beyond the pale, something that's clearly wrong in order to damage an opponent, there's a fair chance it's going to backfire on you. Some people were saying if he had been assassinated, there would have been a civil war in America. Well, they're really not really sure about that. But when we look at the election result in November, if Trump wins, I think there'll be significant rioting. Some left-wing protesters will sort of smash the place up, burn a few things down to express their disapproval. Also, they will claim there's been some sort of cheating as well, Russian interference or whatever. And if Trump loses, I mean, Trump is not going to graciously concede the result, and so a degree of rioting and strife is likely that way as well, which is a very sad situation. And thankfully in the United Kingdom and in Scotland, we don't have that. After the UK general election, okay, there's concern about postal votes, about the security of those, but overall people trust the result, trust the process. And Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak walk through the House of Commons having a friendly chat, having a bit of a joke together, which is the way it should ideally be. So let's hope we never end up in the state that they're in America. Talking about the civility between UK politicians, it's not universal, of course. I mean, Patrick Harvey, leader of the Scottish Green Party, won't so much as lift his head up to look at me, let alone give a friendly greeting. Right, Kamala Harris, now thrust into what we assume is going to be the candidates to be President of the United States. I think the opinion universally not too long ago was she would be a very weak candidate. She was not popular. She wasn't a good media performer. She didn't really have many strengths at all. But now she's the candidate. It's fascinating to see most of the mainstream media responding. They're just determined to give her a boost, to try and give her some momentum in her campaign. Now you get people posing as political commentators or political analysts, whereas what they're presenting is actually a prediction of what they want to happen. So if they're honest, they would say, I want her to win. But they're not quite honest, so they'll say, I think she's going to be great, and I think she's really going to catch up with Trump and overtake him. I think she's going to win. And the reason they're saying that is not a prediction, it's a prophecy that they hope will be self-fulfilling. I mean, look at the BBC. They're just churning out day after day good news stories about Kamala Harris, bad news stories about Donald Trump. Then they're simply, plain and simply, they're trying to influence the election campaign. Now, coming to the thumbnail title of this video, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's vice presidential candidate, called Kamala Harris a childless cat lady who was therefore miserable. Right, should he say that? Well, no, of course he shouldn't, because it's insulting. Now, J.D. Vance, says he's a Catholic, he's a Christian, but then you think, have you not got like the most basic understanding of Christian values that you don't just like hurl insults at people like that? Well, it seems in his case, not. But his point, he's clarified later, is that people who don't have children haven't got the same stake in the future of the nation. Their perspective might be narrower, and it might reflect a wider anti-family mindset that they have. So he's clarified that, but it's too late if you have to clarify it later. Because if you you insult people who are childless, for many of those people, it might not be a choice. Maybe they couldn't find the right person. Maybe there are fertility issues. So an insult on that basis is completely wrong. Even with people who make that choice, you might want to criticize the choice, but being insulting is not the way to do it. Kamala Harris's lack of natural children, the reason for that, I don't know. As far as I'm aware, she hasn't spoken about that publicly. If she'd have made a statement where she'd said, we decided not to have children because I wanted to focus on my political career, then that would be fair game to comment on that. But as far as I'm aware, she hasn't said that. Now, I do find it interesting with childless national leaders. Quite often, they have a story about infertility or miscarriages. In other words, they're saying, okay, I haven't got children, but I just want to make it clear that I would have liked to. And sometimes the thought crosses my mind, I wonder if all of these stories are true. Because, I mean, the standards of integrity in politics now are extremely low. So some advisor said to someone, okay, the fact that you've got no kids actually doesn't play brilliantly with the electorate. What would play better if you said you have miscarriage or infertile or whatever, then you might get some sympathy and that would play well. So we'd recommend you go down one of these lines. Now, I'm not accusing any individual of that. I'm saying for any childless politician, the temptation would be to present a story like that instead. I think if any politician did actually tell the truth, what is the truth in many cases is, I didn't have children because I wanted to focus on my career. I was very ambitious. I wanted to get to the top, so I didn't want the distraction of children. Now, if a politician told the truth that was the case, then that would play very badly indeed. so that the temptation is to avoid that truth. Remember the Conservative leadership contest, Theresa May and Andrea Leadsom. Andrea Leadsom, partway through the campaign, she said, I'm a mum, and that's given me new insight into life, new perspectives. I think that makes me more able to be Prime Minister, leader of the Conservatives. And there was uproar in the media to the point where she dropped out of the race. But I thought, actually, perfectly fair point to make. She wasn't criticising Theresa May. She was just talking about her personal experience. If you spend hundreds of hours being a mum, do you not learn something from that, gain a perspective from that? If you spend hundreds of hours doing anything else, you're allowed to refer to it as a positive. You're allowed to put it on your CV as something that's made you the person you are. So that was completely wrong just a few years ago in Britain. Now, there is a trend, of course, in the Western world towards childlessness, and I think that trend does reflect selfishness and a sort of shallow mentality. The BBC is promoting it left, right and centre. They're continually putting out stories about couples who chose to be childless so they can have a wonderful life, travelling around, going to restaurants and bars and seeing the scenery or whatever, some sort of idealised life. The BBC is promoting that quite consistently, and it's fair enough for people in politics to talk about that and to challenge that. Similarly, if the policies of the Democratic Party are anti-family, which I suggest they probably are in many cases, then okay, challenge that. But to be offensive towards an individual on the basis of what you don't know is necessarily a decision, it might be some personal circumstance beyond their control, is just wrong, it's a mistake, and it is an own goal. Now, of course, politics is so polarised that what will tend to happen is the people who are like on the Republican side, on Trump's side, there'll be a lot of them will take the attitude, I don't care what he said, I don't care how unpleasant it was, he's on our side, so that's good, I'm on his side. And that's quite sad when it gets to the point where your tribal allegiance just overwhelms any sort of moral judgment about what ought and ought not to be said. Again, some people might say, oh, J.D. Vance said that, and he got the headlines. Look, he's been the news story. And okay, there's no such thing as bad news. It actually is a smart strategy. To which the response should always be, I don't care if it's the smart strategy or not, it's just wrong. You shouldn't talk about people like that. Right, back to Kamala Harris. Launching her campaign, one of the first places she went on her campaign, one of the first stops, was to appear on RuPaul's Drag Race, the drag TV show. Now, why did she do that? Did she do that because there's a huge audience there that she can reach with her smiling face? No. She chose that show so she could align herself with the drag LGBT movement, because the entertainment wing of the LGBT movement is drag. So going along with drag or having a drag actor or a drag artist performing at something, it's a way of aligning with the LGBT agenda without actually saying anything. The LGBT agenda is sort of anti-family as well, like mum, dad and the kids is the one thing they're not interested in. But so if you want to align yourself with the LGBT agenda, invite a drag performer. You don't have to say anything, but everyone knows what you're really saying. So the LGBT agenda, promoting gender confusion, homosexuality, homosexual relationships associated with a lot of problems for individuals, and also it's associated with the demasculinizing of society. Now, I thought about that word, demasculinizing. I sort of made it up myself. It is actually a real word. But then I thought what the proper word is for this, and it's emasculating, taking away masculinity from men. That's a big part of what the drag movement is about. Right, then we had the Olympics. Now, the Olympics showed again that the LGBT cause is a core value for those of a progressive mindset. So Kamala Harris, she wants to put the LGBT values at the heart of her campaign, because they are a core value for her. In the Olympics, when the people making the Olympics opening ceremony, when they want to attack Christianity, when they want to put forward the values of modern France, LGBT really fundamental to it. So if you're the sort of person who thinks, oh, I'm not too keen on the LGBT, okay, they put up those flags in the supermarket and I really don't like it, but hey, it's only for June, I'm not really too bothered. It's a much deeper thing than that. It's a really fundamental attack on the underlying values of our society. Now, Kamala Harris as well, another fundamental, maybe the fundamental issue for her is abortion. She's going to focus on that. She has been already, and she will continue to focus on it as probably the central issue of her campaign. Now, last week we were at the Refuel Christian Conference up in the northeast of Scotland, and there was a politics question and answer session. And in some of the discussion, it came out that some Christians in America say you can't be a Democrat and a Christian. What do you think of that? Well, can you be a Democrat and a Christian? Well, that's the bad way to phrase it. That's a poor articulation of the issue. The better articulation is, should a Christian support the Democrats? Should a Christian support the party that is making it a central policy to kill unborn children? Well, I think the answer to that is no. A Christian should not support a party that's so enthusiastic about killing unborn children. And people say, oh, you can't say you can be a Christian in any party. I'm sorry, I'm not aware where that principle is. I'm not aware of the moral principle that says it doesn't matter what political party you're doing. It doesn't matter how gravely immoral their policies. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian, you can join any of them because, well, I don't know. There's no reason. So that was an interesting discussion. Right, moving on to Donald Trump. Is Donald Trump pro-life? A few years ago, he was making very definite pro-life statements. And I remember at the time thinking, I'm not sure you really believe this. I'm not sure you mean it. But if we're talking about a politician, if a politician's saying, this is what I would do, then whether they believe it or not, well, if they do actually do it, that's secondary. The important thing is unborn lives are saved. Whether the person actually, their heart's in it or not, if the unborn lives are saved, that's a good thing. But of course, the concern is, if someone's saying they're pro-life but they don't really believe it, you then have to think, well, will they actually follow through with it and act on it? I think with Trump, who we see now, he's not pro-life. He's now taking a sort of middle-of-the-road position, saying states can decide for themselves. So states deciding for themselves, that's better than the Democrat position, which would impose abortion on all states. So it's better, but is Trump pro-life? No. I'm just going off at a tangent. I'm quite concerned about Trump's isolationist foreign policy. I think America overall, for many decades, has contributed to restraining evil in the world. Okay, America's made lots of mistakes, and lots of things you can criticize there, but the net effect has been to restrain evil. If that restraint is removed, we might see even evil running riot in a way we haven't seen for many decades. When it comes to the LGBT family issues, Donald Trump, well, again, I think he's a cultural conservative. Not too keen on the newfangled transgender stuff, but the LGBT, absolutely cool with that. Marriage, promoting marriage, not remotely interested in that. The other thing with Donald Trump, just looking at his character, he's just vicious to anyone who disagrees with him or opposes him. No restraints, no graciousness, no professionalism, no statesmanship. I think they're very serious issues. So if I lived in America, like, this is just a personal opinion, if I lived in America, could I vote for Kamala Harris? Absolutely not. No way. Would I therefore vote for Trump as a less bad option, in my personal opinion? I know leaving abortion up to states, I suppose that's sort of better. Would I vote for him? I don't know. I don't know. It's been the same in other American elections. I've followed it and I've thought, I certainly wouldn't vote for the Democrats. Would I vote for Trump? Maybe, maybe not. Normally by the time election days come around, I've normally decided maybe I would have done. Don't know. We shall see. So the 2 points I bring out from this were relevant to the Scottish Family Party. Number one, I think US politics is dominating Scottish politics at the moment. And I would say to everyone in Scotland watching this video, if you focus too much on US politics, it will tend to make you less effective in Scottish politics. If your political allegiance is more distinctly related to American politics than it is to Scottish politics, that really doesn't help Scotland in any way at all. It doesn't make you more effective as a political activist in Scotland. That is for sure. So I would encourage us all, including myself, to focus on what's going on here in Scotland and in the UK as well. And the second point I would make is, if we look at American politics, absolutely central is the family LGBT tension and the life-death tension with regard to abortion as well. These are absolutely critical political issues around the world, particularly in America, and they are coming up the agenda worldwide, which suits us down to the ground. The last thing we want is these issues just being ignored and politics going on as usual. So, I hope that was interesting. Do join the Scottish Family Party. There is a link right below. And thanks for watching.